Welcome back to the Homeschool Planning Pep Talk series. Last time we talked about making sure before we get distracted by the next homeschool year, we have a plan to finish this one strong. So I'm going to assume you've already done that. You are well on your way to finishing this year strong, and now you're ready to start looking ahead to next year. But there are a few questions I still think you need to ask before you purchase one new piece of curriculum. So the first question is, what kind of human would I like to raise? Before you even think about the academic goals, it's really helpful to think about the kind of person you want your child to be when they leave home. You might want to brainstorm, even with your spouse, sit down and just sort of write out traits. Maybe it's honest, kind, creative, hardworking, joyful, a lover of God's word, one who prays, self-controlled, faithful, a good friend. These are the kinds of ideas that we want to keep in the back of our mind before we start choosing our curriculum. It can be way too easy to forget the most important things because we kind of get distracted by the academic goals. And don't get me wrong, those are important, but they are going to be most fully supported when we think about these bigger ideas first. And I talk a little bit more about that in some other places, and I'll put some links below if you want to think about that more. Now, let's just remember, though, that education is not about producing children whose minds have just been filled up with a certain amount of knowledge and facts. As Christian home educators, especially, we're to plan our academic year with the whole person in mind. So it's really helpful to prayerfully consider this question first. The second question you're going to want to ask is what has worked really well this past year? Now, of course, this may not be as helpful if this is your first year going into homeschooling, but you can even think just about maybe some of the non-academic things that have worked really well in the past year, just in the stage of growth and with the unique children that you have. You know, a lot of times I hear moms talk about choosing new stuff for the new school year, even though what they've already been using has been working well. And as someone who kind of loves a little bit of change, I can see this as being a temptation for myself because, of course, mom wants to feel like things are fresh too, right? But choosing something new just for the sake of new, if our children are actually already thriving, may actually be counterproductive. Faithful consistency is really our best friend when it comes to the homeschool life marathon. There are enough areas of challenge that you're going to need to change, or just the change and fluctuations that occur in the midst of life. So don't throw a new math curriculum in there just for the sake of a new math curriculum if what you already have is working. So here's some questions you can ask to kind of figure out what has been working well for your family in the past year. What books were your children most excited about in the past school year? Which programs produced the fewest tears? Just because something is hard doesn't mean it's not working. But if something is always leading to tears, that probably is not one that was working well. And then another question is just, what have you observed your children playing or talking about outside of school hours? That can kind of, if you're paying attention there, you can kind of see the things that have most struck them or most encouraged and inspired them with wonder during the school year. And of course, it's important to ask what's been enjoyable for you as the teacher as well. Teachers, moms are people too. And so if there is something that you just always can't wait to pull off the school shelf and do with your kids during the day, write that down. That's something that's worked well. And it's important to include those things that most make mom enthusiastic in our homeschool year as well. But of course, the flip side of this question is our third question, and that's what has not worked well in the past year. Maybe there's something you never really seemed to get around to because you and the children just couldn't stand it. Maybe there was something that seemed good in theory, but the reality of the way it played out in your family just didn't seem to work. Was there a subject or a curriculum that always seemed to end in tears? Or was there a textbook that was so unclear that you found yourself having to reteach almost every lesson? I've been there before. Maybe you put too many things on your daily checklist, or maybe you put too few. Sometimes we can make things too hard for ourselves and our children, or maybe they're bored because we haven't challenged them sufficiently. So think about things that you regret not including this past year, something maybe you want to prioritize in the next year, or is it something you have to let go of and just know it's not feasible in this season of your life? If you want to be really brave, you could even ask your children what's something they would like to see changed, or if you could eliminate one subject from school, what would it be? Okay, you can't just stop doing math, but their answers may give you a helpful pointer as to something that's not working out so well, or a way that maybe you need to change your approach to those subjects in the upcoming school year. The final question I think that's really helpful for us to ask before we start planning or buying curriculum is, at the end of next school year, I will feel successful if blank. And how would you complete that sentence? Would you feel successful if your child had mastered their addition facts? If you spent 30 minutes every day reading as a family? If there was healing in a particular family relationship? If you included a consistent morning routine or more hands-on learning? You probably didn't say, I'll feel successful if we've completed every single answer in every single workbook. You need to figure out what truly defines success for your family in this particular year. And that is going to help you as you fill out your planning sheets, as you determine how to best spend your time in the next year. I will note here that sometimes when I am talking to my husband, the top things that come to my mind that define success may not always be the top things that come to his mind. So as we discuss this question and think about our similar but kind of different end goals, we can come up with a united vision for our family. And again, there's not one right or wrong answer to this question. It's going to vary year to year. And I think it is, though, helpful to ask, or at least think about and begin answering the question before we start planning. If you can start with these 4 questions, I think you're going to be able to make wiser decisions when it comes to picking particular curriculums or deciding exactly how to spend your time next homeschool year. So take just a little bit of time to prayerfully consider these things. Jot down ideas, verbally process, speak with your spouse, talk to a trusted friend. Just take a little bit of time to ask these 4 questions before you plan for your homeschool or buy any curriculum next year. For even more homeschool planning encouragement, grab my free homeschool planning guide. You can find that at humilityanddoxology.com/homeschool-planning-guide, or just check the link in the show notes.